Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jai Shri Gauranitai, Jai Shri Srimad Govardhana ki jai. Krishna Balaram Giri Govardhan ki jai. Devi Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Hari Hari Bol. So we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam today from the second canto, chapter 5, verse 34. This chapter is entitled The Cause of All Causes. Narayanam Namaskritam Navochanam Navatanam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nastapadeshu Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavate Sevaya Tam Uttama Shoki Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Vashapuga Shante Tarandam Mudakeshayam Kalakama Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivajat Vashapuga Shante Tarandam Mudakeshayam Kalakama Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivajat Vasapuga Sahashante Tarandam Udakeshayam Kalakama Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivajat. Vasapuga Sahasrante Tarandam Udakeshayam Kalakama Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivayat. Okay, word for word. Vasapuga, many years. Sahasrante, of thousands of years. Tat, that. Andam, the universal globe. Udake, in the causal water. Sayam, being drowned. Kala, eternal time. Karma, action. Svabhavasta, according to the modes of nature. Jivaha, the Lord of the living beings. Ajivam, non-animated. Ajivajat, caused to be animated. A translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: thus all the universes remain thousands of eons within the water of the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings entering in each of them cause them to be fully animated. Repeatedly, thus all the universes remain thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings entering in each of them cause them to be fully animated. Purport. The Lord is described here as a jiva because He is the leader of all other jivas, living entities. In the Vedas, He is described as the nitya, the leader of all the other nityas. The Lord's relation with the living entities is like that of the Father with the sons. The sons and the Father are qualitatively equal, but the Father is never the Son, nor is the Son ever the Father who begets. So, as described above, the Lord as Garbhodaksha Vishnu or Hiranyagarbha Super Soul enters into each and every universe, and causes it to be animated by begetting the living entities within the womb of the material nature, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 14.3. After each annihilation of the material creation, all the living entities are merged within the body of the Lord, and after creation they are again impregnated within the material energy. In material existence, therefore, the material energy is seemingly the mother of the living entities, and the Lord is the Father. When, however, the animation takes place, the living entities revive their own natural activities under the spell of time and energy, and thus the varieties of living beings are manifested. The Lord, therefore, is ultimately the cause of all animation in the material world. Translation again. Thus all the universes remain thousands of eons within the water of the causal ocean. And the Lord of living beings, entering in each of them, cause them to be fully animated. Oma Gyana Timananasya Gyanam Ganasya Lakaya Saksus Ulmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So this is the cause of all causes. Nothing exists without Krishna, just in case you're wondering. He is the cause of all causes. This, when you have to prepare or meditate on speaking at class time, you tend to look a bit closer at the Bhagavatam, which is one of the blessings of having to give class. Generally, perhaps we just hear verse from verse and spread out over, a chapter will be spread out over weeks and weeks, and you sort of get lost. Maybe lose track of it unless you backtrack. So when you give class, you backtrack a bit. And I was just trying to work out how we got onto this subject, and it starts right back in the previous chapter. The very beginning, a question is posed. Ultimately, the Srimad Bhagavatam is just that, a series of questions and answers, which begins right at the very beginning in the Namasarana forest, where the initial 6 questions are asked, and from those 6 questions, the whole Bhagavatam is expanded upon. So Maharaj Pariksit was asking Sukadeva Goswami earlier on in the last chapter, how does everything created, how does everything come about? You know, what's the cause of everything? How does it work? Which is a very interesting question. Most living entities in the material world are very interested in this material realm. Everyone wants to know how the universe functions, where we've come from, and the outer space, and are there living entities out there, how did it all begin? And there's so many theories and speculations out there, but everyone is very interested. So the Bhagavatam deals with this subject because living entities are very interested, and it's very important that we understand the creation, our Krishna, the greatness and the power of Krishna. The earlier cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam deal with the greatness of the Lord in great detail. So we develop appreciation for the Lord. So then, instead of answering directly himself, Sukadeva Goswami, at the beginning of this chapter, if I find the beginning of it, this is, I think, right at the very beginning, verse number 2, perhaps. He asked a question. My dear, Sukadeva Goswami now relates another discussion, because the Bhagavatam's discussion within discussion is within discussion. It's quite interesting to follow. So now he's quoting Narada Muni questioning his father, Lord Brahma. We understand as practicing devotees, Lord Brahma is the chief engineer of this universe. So if you want to find out how this universe is created, the best person to ask. And you couldn't get a better source, isn't it? Directly from the Creator himself. Narada Muni is his son, and he's questioning him. My dear father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control all this is being done? So these verses we've been dealing with just deals with this one question: how is it created? Which is 2 words in this. Yata Shrishtam. How is it created? So we've been, since verse 21 to 34 today, 35 finishes tomorrow, we're discussing the creation, which is quite an extraordinary thing. And when you think about the language being used in the Bhagavatam, especially for newcomers or perhaps new devotees, it's a bit difficult to follow. You've got this Mahatattva and Pradhan and causal ocean, and so all these extraordinary things are going on. And we've all been, most of us have been brought up thinking it's a bit different than that, you know. It's a bit more simple. It's just a bunch of matter out there that somehow or other come together and sort itself out. I think it's just very simple theories, even though they're garbed in very scientific language. They're quite very simple, you know. You'd have to say dumb theories, actually. You know, the idea of a couple of rocks smashed into each other and creating everything is not a very sound theory, even though you can make it sound very wonderful. It's like, because they're using their imperfect senses, if you can imagine a bunch of tall buildings right next to each other, looking out onto all the freeways and highways, and on one floor there's several apartments. Only one apartment has a good clear window they can see out. The other ones have got little windows and they just see into the other buildings, so they've got very limited access to knowledge. So they depend on this chap in the front apartment. They've never been anywhere, they don't know anything, they're never let out. Right? It's just like the living entities on this planet. We're just stuck on this one planet. We have our scientists. So scientists have got the front apartment with a big window. They observe. They've got their big fancy telescopes hooked up to fancy computers, but ultimately they're looking with their eyes. So you can have all the most fancy equipment in the world, but you still ultimately depend on your senses to evaluate and observe. So this chap he's the Ghani of this particular floor in this apartment building, and he's looking out and he sees all these cars and they're all different colours, and he's trying to work out how it all works. And he measures their movements, their speed, because that's what scientists do. They measure things, they calculate things, they're great mathematicians, and they come up with theories with a high level of speculation. Because how much can you know from just looking out at something? You know, like he's looked, so he notes down there's different coloured cars and they drive at different speeds at different times. He notices there's these energies out there, these lights, they go, you know, red, green, orange, you know. And these energies are so powerful they actually can stop all the movements of all these cars. When it goes red, everyone just freezes. You know, so he notes all this down. He's got no idea what's really going on. He's just observing, and then he passes all the information, makes a theory out of it, passes it on to all the rest of the guys on the other units. They can't see very much and depend on him and his observation, and they have absolutely no idea what's going on. There's even a bonnet on the cars, and under the bonnet there's... Prabhupada mentioned this a couple of verses ago. That's what got me thinking this way. He mentioned cars. The verse you spoke on, was it? It must have been verse 32. Prabhupada says here, the different types of bodily constructions of living entities exactly look at different types of motor cars manufactured by the assembly of allied motor cars. Prabhupada mentioned, so it's like that. So there's quite a lot that goes into a car, but if you're just looking out from a distance and see a car, you can't ascertain that much. It's just like looking into outer space and looking at some planets and stars, and it doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how smart you are. But if someone from the Toyota car company came along, one of the engineers with the manuals, and knocked on the door of all the other flats and said, you know, actually this theory that this chap has been working on by looking at, it's pretty basic. There's actually a lot more to it. And he starts explaining to them things that they can't comprehend. Combustion engines and carburetors and gearboxes and alternators and drive shafts, and it's like you might as well be speaking another language. So it's a little bit like that for us at first when we come hear these terminology of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's so beyond what we've been conditioned to think of how the universe functions. We have a very simplistic, ignorant view of the universe based on our school teachers and the science books that were provided. We have no idea who's written those science books. They're just provided by the government, and we taught these things, even though they're theories, we taught them as facts, and we believe them. We become embedded, and we process everything through these things we've learned in school. I find this a lot when I mentioned this before, when I deal with guests on the farm, and we talk about cows, and because in their mind everything's evolved from a rock, you know, and slowly become a cow and everything else. So when we talk about caring for cows, a lot of them, you know, and weaning calves and all those sort of things, practically every Saturday I take a tour around that, very similar questions. What would they do naturally in the wild? Which is a fair enough question. Where they wouldn't be able to get wings and so many other things wouldn't happen in the wild. But I say to them, there's no such thing as a wild cow. They go, what? And because their brain's like going through the Darwin theory. But that's what and even as devotees, we're conditioned that way. I've had a temple president ask me once, this is many years ago, 30 years ago, I had to call the vet out for a sick cow, and the money was tight. So he said, well, what would they naturally do? They wouldn't normally have a vet, And I did prove actually there's no such thing as a wild cow. And this comes about from an assumption, and I repeat this all the time, based on a theory by a chap called Darwin. That's all. It's an assumption based on a theory. There's no other substance to this knowledge versus all the traditional knowledge, history, modern history, theological findings, all the Vedas, all the vast knowledge that's out there doesn't say that the cows were wild. It says they were there from the beginning of creation. That's pretty hard for people to get their head around. These same personalities are speaking now, Narada Muni and Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma told Narada Muni that without four things, the whole universe would have gone through ruination. Those four things are the Vedas. You have to have knowledge. Fire, cows and Brahmins. He said if these four things weren't there at the very beginning, the whole universe would have been a mess. So cows have been an intricate part of the creation from the very beginning. So we are bewildered by these teachings, these scientific findings that are out there. Remember, there's our famous Isaac Newton. We all know Isaac Newton. He's a physician and an astronomer, and he made this model. Very, I guess he welded it or screwed it together of the solar system, and had a crank on it. And if you turned it, everything moved around with gears according to the ratio of the sun and the moon and how they move around each other. It was quite a wonderful model. And then one day, one of his friends, a great atheist, came. He walked in the room. He saw this amazing model. He cranked it. This is amazing. Who made this? Who made this? And Isaac said, I don't know. I just walked in and it was just in the room. But he said, no, come on, don't kid around. Who made this? It's incredible. And he said, you fool. You think this little tiny little model of the real thing's incredible, and you think the real thing just happened by chance. You foolish man. So because Isaac Newton was a theist, actually. He was actually believed in God. Wasn't a fool, very intelligent. So that's the problem. So we're very brainwashed, even as devotees, just one degree or another by a previous education, where we've been told that. I think recently the scientists made a statement that got onto the news, and I mentioned this before, a very humble statement. We believe we only know 10% of the universe. Now, if you think about that, it's not a very intelligent statement, because how can you know 10% of the whole? You know what I mean? So they say things like this and get away with it. There's a lot more to find out, so we need to get the other 90%, we're going to need another $90 million. That's basically what they're saying. If you want to keep our job, we can't quite find it all. But we're so fortunate that here, and we've got to take this to heart, we are hearing about the description of the universe from Lord Brahma, who is the creator of the universe. Isn't that amazing? If you think about it, it's not just it's pretty deep stuff. And this is quite a short summary. It's giving over just a dozen or so verses, and Srila Prabhupada gives us wonderful purports. But there's more information further in the Bhagavatam. The 5th canto is a real head spinner. The whole creation, the whole structure of the universe. It takes a bit to take in, but we have to realise we're teeny. We are tiny. When the human beings aren't the supreme, all that there is, we are limited little finite living entities in these limited little bodies with little senses, and we can look out, observe, conclude, but we're not able to take it all in. Even Parvata Muni, who's Narada Muni's offsider, his eternal friend. They travel the universe. He was given, I can't remember the exact pastime, but he was given special vision, empowered vision, just to see the Bhumandala, which is just a section of the universe, just about to conceive it and see it. So even within this universe, there's not many living entities that can actually perceive of the whole universe as it is. It's such a vast and wonderful thing. And one disciple asked Srila Prabhupada, what about other universes? Prabhupada said, one universe is enough for you. It's a huge thing. And this universe is particularly small, as we hear the Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Lord Brahma visited Krishna and Dwarka, and he told the doorkeeper, Lord Brahma, I'm here to see Krishna. The servant goes back and says, Krishna, Lord Brahma is here. He says, which Lord Brahma? And he comes back, which Lord Brahma? He says, the Lord Brahma. Like he's the chief personality, original person of the universe. I think it'd be pretty obvious who I am. I'm Brahma, can't you see, I've got 4 heads. Anyway, he told him it's the forehead of Lord Brahma. He brought him in, and then Krishna, by his mystic opulence and powers, to teach Lord Brahma a lesson, and all of us a lesson, he invited all the Brahmas of all the universes, and they came in their millions. There's unlimited universes practically, and some are very big Brahmas, with many heads. The bigger the universe, you need more heads to deal with it all. I guess that's how it works. I mean, so some had this, I won't mention the millions of heads they had, but they had a lot of heads, some of them. Lord Brahma said, there's a few. Okay, I'm the liberal Brahma after all. So, what to speak of us? What to speak of us? We're teeny little, you could say almost insignificant, but as we are insignificant, we are unique, because we are unique parts and parcels of the Supreme Being. As Srila Prabhupada points out, the Son and the Father are qualitatively the same. The Son is never the Father is never the Son, but still they're very similar in one sense in spirit. And Srila Jiva Goswami says that all living entities have a unique relationship with Krishna, and Krishna misses that particular relationship. So that's what makes us unique. We have a unique relationship with Krishna that's very special just to us. And that's what makes our spiritual practice very exciting, because we are redeveloping, reawakening that lost eternal relationship. So the Bhagavatam, through these early stages, through most of the first 9 cantos, we are learning about the greatness of Krishna, and the greatness of God, how he does things, how he functions, how he comes into this world, interacts with his devotees. And there's mostly a lot of awe and reverence and appreciation. So eventually when you get to the 10th canto, as mentioned many times, and then all that's put to the side and we learn about Krishna's sweetness, his wonderful, sweet personality and interaction with his dear devotees. But before we get to that point and to try and dive into those pastimes, we need to get a clear understanding about Krishna. So this is what we're learning now. These questions of Maharaj Briggs wants to know how all this works. Who does it all? And Lord Brahma now is admitting, I'm not even the cause. He's on the secondary cause. It's like the guy, the Toyota guy that's visiting those chaps in that tower. He says, we just put the cars together, but all the ingredients and plastic and rubber, and they come from, they're from the miners. They come, they're mined and processed and brought together, and parts are made everywhere. It's quite a complex thing to make a car. I think there's something like 600 or 700 parts in the car, and that's just a motor car, not to speak of the universe, just to put a car together. So similarly, Lord Brahma is the engineer. He's given a blueprint, he's given all the ingredients, he's given the inspiration by the Lord, the intelligence, the ability. He doesn't just sort of rock up in the universe and go, okay, what am I going to do here, I'll chuck a bit of dirt, roll them into balls and throw them out and make them float. Not quite. It takes great intelligence and ability, and that comes from the original personality of God. And he is the cause of all causes. And Lord Brahma states that also in the Brahma Samhita. Krishna is his supreme control and cause of all causes. Matta parataram kingshit asti dharanjaya. Krishna says himself, there's no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me like pearls on a thread. Very beautiful analogy. You see a lady walking with a nice necklace, you don't see the thread. But you take that thread away and see what happens to the pearls. And Ramai Swami was speaking about this too, this energy or prana, this magic through the universe, that's Krishna. And it mentions here that these universes are floating for eons, which means long, long time. And they're not animated, they're like dull matter, I guess. Nothing happens, they're just floating there. And when Krishna enters as a super soul universe and everything starts, so these bodies that we have, when it's the soul, without the soul, when it's the soul and super soul, Krishna within our heart makes it all function, isn't it? Anyway, Krishna says in the 18th canto that the super soul sits within our heart and he conducts, directs the living entities. And we think we just do whatever we want, but no, when you wake up in the morning, and you quickly figure out where you are and who you are, that's Krishna within our reminding you. Otherwise you wouldn't have a clue, you would be lost. That's why without Krishna nothing functions. He's that thread, that energy throughout the whole universe. So this is what you can't see this by observing. This you can only learn from realised souls. Just like those chaps in the apartment building, they're learning from the Toyota engineer what cars really are and what's going on out there. That there's traffic control, those lights aren't powered to actually organise the traffic flows properly. They're all on one side or the other so they don't prang into each other. There's some order there, some rule even within traffic. There's some order. And so the universe is under the supreme order of the Lord. It's organised. It's not just random as we are taught from an early age at school. It's just pretty random. Everything just turns up one day. The universe just turns up by itself. There's a cause. And there was one reporter that he sort of pushed Prabhupada. He said, what about there's something, because we're saying here in this HG Krishna Temple that Krishna is the cause of everything. There's no true superior to him. There's nothing beyond him. You've reached the end of knowledge. Vedas means knowledge. Vedanta Sutra means the end of knowledge. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of Vedanta Sutra. You reach the end. You can't go any further in your discoveries, in your research. Isn't that wonderful? It was my biggest relief just before I joined Masari Prabhupada's books, when I came to that realization in some degree that I said, God, I was so relieved. Finally, I got some answers. That's it. I don't have to look anymore. I don't have to look anymore. I used to read all these nonsense books, and you read one after the other, and they're all claiming some spiritual truth of one kind, and no one will give you an answer. Just you've got to buy the next book. And there was those Lobsang Rampa books a lot of devotees read. I got to the 22nd book. I'm still waiting for the answer. In the meantime, I found out he was a professional writer. He was raking in the money. He was making it all up. Because it was about this Tibetan monks. It was quite mystical and attractive. And you read this story about this little monk growing up in the monastery, and it was far out, but it ended up nowhere. It's just the first book really sucks you in, and you got to buy the rest of it. And there's all sorts of other weird things. But when we read Srila Prabhupada's books, because we reach Krishna, the end of knowledge, the absolute truth, and then it's like the brakes go on. That's it. I've landed. There's no need to look. Then we just dive in deeper and deeper and relish. So we don't have to worry. But it's very wonderful. So the process is to understand Krishna's greatness. It's like you might be working for a big company. You start off as a little office clerk or whatever it may be, and you become a good employee, good servant. And you might get a glimpse of the boss one day, the CEO, when he flies in here and there. It's an international company. You don't get to see him much. But as you work your way through and become more committed and dedicated to the service of this company, and then you get promoted a bit more, then you may get to see the big CEO more often. Eventually you might even get invited to a board meeting to make a presentation. You have more contact with the Supreme CEO. Very formal, a lot of awe and reverence. This guy's paying your wages. You don't want to do the wrong thing, so you follow all the rules and regulations nicely to please the boss, to get promoted. And then eventually you get invited to a corporate, I get party of some sort. You get to maybe brush shoulders with that personality. Another time you might even get introduced to his wife, like that. And before you know it, you're sitting on the board, you're very qualified, you have a lot of interaction with that person, and one day he invites you to his home to meet his family, and then you see a completely different side of him that you've never seen before. The guards drop, you relax, you're having some dinner together, you have a chat, and he finds out all about you, you find out about him, the relationship becomes sweeter. So this is the process of Krishna consciousness. We go through all these formalities. We are learning about the structure of the universe, the greatness of God, we're following rules and regulations, but ultimately there will be the time that we'll enter into our eternal relationship, and it will be very sweet and wonderful and personal, and that awe and reverence will, especially what we've been taught by our acharyas, it's based on the loving sentiments of the Brajavasis. It's not the mood of Vaikuntha, which is always like this. And that's for a lot of living entities that like to have that relationship with God. That's at a distance and bowing down and being very, it's like he's a supreme God. But the Vrindavan devotees, the Brajavasis, they have a different relationship. He's one of us. He's our friend, he's our son, he's our nephew, it's a completely different mood. It's like you now entered the boss's realm. You're sitting with his family and you're patting his dog. It's a different mood. And at the office, with your tie on and the boss walks in. It's like different mood. So the Bhagavatam will slowly walk us through these stages of Krishna consciousness. That's why it's very important to hear the Bhagavatam on a regular basis, because without this knowledge, we'll be gazing out the window, wondering what all these cars are, what all these planets are, what this world is, who we are. And you'll never know by gazing out the window. You can gaze for as long as you want. So we receive our knowledge from authorized authorities. We hear from Srila Prabhupada, who comes in an unbroken link from Lord Brahma, who is the creator of the universe. You cannot get a better source of knowledge. Direct tap, directly from the source. And it's interesting to study how Krishna creates everything. It's one of his pastimes. It's very amazing. When he's lying there sleeping, universes are coming up his pores, and we hear today they're floating in the ocean, just waiting for him to activate them. And he impregnates them. And the sleeping living entities from the previous universe that couldn't get their act together got stuck back in again. They've been dormant for God knows how long. And back we go, and again we keep the whole thing on again. It says ultimately it's the living entities through their desires and activities that keep the whole creation rocking and rolling. There'd be no need for it if we weren't. And that's why it's tucked away in the corner of the creation. The material world's tucked away. It's like the naughty remember at school, they don't do it anymore, but when I was in primary school, you'd get sent to the corner if you were naughty, right? The naughty corner. And you'd have to turn your back to the class and to the teachers. So the material world's the naughty corner of the creation where the living entities want to turn their backs to God. They go there for a while, so they figure themselves out. He lets them, but he's very kind, the teacher. He doesn't want them to miss out on the lesson, so he slips a few books around into the corner for them. They have a bit of a look and they figure out, I better get my act together and turn back around and go back to the classroom. So the living entities, we learn difficult lessons until we get knocked around a little bit, but the idea is to wake up a bit. Jiva Jaga Gaurajamna Bholi, wake up. We're sons of the Father. What are we doing loitering in this dead-end material world? And it is a dead end because you don't get anywhere. It doesn't know what you do. It's the same thing over and over again. Time to die again. Oh, another body. It's time to die again. Another body. Next time, die again. Never stops, chasing the senses. You're a soul, you're not a bunch of matter. Why are you trying to enjoy matter? Go back home to the spiritual world where you belong. So the Bhagavatam is doing that just for us, that we just keep hearing every day, turning up, reading Prabhupada's book and serving. Because by service we please the spiritual master, please the Lord, and ultimately everything is revealed within our heart, because it's already there. And it's just in Krishna praying, that pure love and all the knowledge that goes with it is sitting in our heart right now. It just needs to be reawakened by the cleansing process, the Harinam Sankirtan, and transit loving service to the spiritual master, and everything naturally awakens. You don't have to endeavour separately, you don't have to get it from somewhere else, you don't need to Google it. It's already there, just fan, reawaken, and it's a very wonderful, and Susukam Katavaya, it's a joyful process, enjoyable, and you get fed as well, yummy pashamas, and you dance. It's a nice program. Okay, so I'll stop at this point, it's 8:20. If anyone wants to comment, correct, ask questions, now's your time. Yes, if you want to grab that microphone on top of the cushion, no, the one on top of the cushions are working. Just pick it up with a wire and everything. That way, because the radio's on, up the top, you grab the whole thing. In the kitchen and people outside, and I've noticed if you don't have a microphone, then most people just fade away. And sometimes wonderful questions come up.
Thank you for a wonderful class. We just wanted to know what the journalist Charles School profile is like.
I sidetracked, didn't I? That's what happens. Yes, so the journalist asked Srila Prabhupada, thank you for reminding me, about if there's something beyond Krishna, something else, you know. And Srila Prabhupada very humbly said, according to our information, referring to the Bhagavatam, Krishna is the supreme cause of all causes. But if you can show us something or someone that's greater, then we will worship that something and that someone. But in the meantime, we'll worship our Krishna. Because who's going to come up with something greater than Krishna? It's not possible. So that's what I was going to say. In the meantime, we will worship our Krishna. And I think we should all worship our Krishna in the meantime. If you can find something greater than Krishna, let me know. Let us know. Let everybody know. Okay, anybody else? And one more over here. We've got a few minutes.
Thank you for a wonderful class. When I was down at the University of Tasmania, I was situated in the Antarctic Institute. Now, some of the world's top science is conducted there because the Antarctic plateau acts like an engine for all of the world's weather patterns. So it's a lot of international scientists there, a lot of money. And in the institute itself, there was all this equipment, millions of dollars spent on all this scientific equipment that the scientists and the lecturers were using. And they had oceanographers, geologists, physicists, all these sorts of things. One day I was having lunch in the lunchroom with a particular oceanographer. He's quite high up in the hierarchy there, and he was there with one of his colleagues, and I thought, I'm just going to press these scientists, and I just started a friendly conversation, and I said, Nathan, I want to give his full name. So his name was Nathan. I said, Nathan, what is it actually that drives the oceans? Because he's an oceanographer. And he was saying, it's sort of the weather patterns, generally weather patterns. And then I said, well, what is it that drives the weather patterns? And he said, well, it's mainly the sun. And then I said, okay, well, what is it that drives the sun? And he was saying, well, there are these gases and chemicals, and they all sort of interact. And I said, well, what is it that makes the chemicals and the gases interact? And at this point, it was actually quite bizarre. He was looking at his colleague, and they both sort of started laughing, and they did not actually have an answer. And they could tell that where I was going with this, even with even within their own scientific knowledge, which is supposed to be some of the top in the world, they cannot follow this very, very basic line of thinking. I mean, this is very basic logic, What to speak of metaphysical matters. So I'm thinking, because there's a quote by Srila Prabhupada. I think Prabhupada says these scientists, they are over-intelligent. So they are very sort of clever at some things. That is a type of intelligence. But when it comes to basic reasoning, basic inquiry, which has to be there. If it's not there, then it's not actually a scientific process. So that is actually missing.
Maya Paritagyana, as Krishna calls for. Their knowledge is being stolen by illusion. It's interesting. I heard a very similar dialogue between a devotee and an atheist, and they were arguing about the existence of God. And the devotee was doing a similar thing. He was just smashing and smashing and smashing. And then the atheist became very frustrated. And at the end he said, for God's sake, let's stop this. So, for God's sake. Last one, prabhu. Let's get 4 minutes to the serious part of the day. For God's sake.
Story, Srila Prabhupada was in India and he met up with a big industrialist, like a glass manufacturer. So he was asking the glass manufacturer, he was like a Hindu person, a big high up position. And he says, Prabhupada said, so where's the glass from? And he says, Swamiji, it comes from the sand and silicon and whatever, different material elements. And so Prabhupada said, so where do these ingredients come from to produce the glass? And he was a humble person, so he could understand where Prabhupada was coming from. And he says, they come from Bhagavan, And Prabhupada said, so you're stealing from Bhagavan?
Interesting, very nice. Okay, thank you very, very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srimad Bhagavatam.